these fall sports, these winter sports, they were kind of bearing the brunt of the first wave of conference realignment. The travel schedule for Stanford volleyball and soccer have been pretty ridiculous. These are students, right? These are student athletes. And I just am very, very impressed by the way that these Stanford athletes have been able to balance everything and perform in a wildly new era of college sports that, as we know, did not always have them top of mind when people were making these decisions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. It is Thursday, December 5th, and we got something a little bit different. We've been talking a lot of soccer the last couple of weeks, and so we're going to talk about everything else. We got college basketball, WNBA, PWHL, NCAA volleyball, a little bit of college soccer maybe, and a final note on NWSL to close out. We're going to do a look around the world of women's sports, catch up on what you've been missing, and so I hope everyone's ready to buckle up and enjoy. Let's go. Okay, so today seemed like a great opportunity. We have been in the soccer trenches. We have been covering NWSL playoffs, NWSL championship, goes straight into 2 U.S. women's national team games, soccer trenches, soccer, slog. Let's look at what else is going on in women's sports. We've had to gloss over some stuff. We've had to skip over things. We've had to, because we're kind of focusing in on the big stories that have been going on in the United States. But now it's like, okay, what else is going on? What else is happening in women's sports? Because we're moving into it's December. We're moving into winter sports, December, January. It's when you're just going to mostly be talking about off-season stuff in the world of professional basketball, professional soccer, though there will be the unrivaled 3v3 in January through March. I'm interested to kind of see what that product looks like, particularly on TV. So let's just see. Let's look at the big headlines. We're going to do a little bit of a roundup, hit a couple different sports, do a little bit longer maybe on some things, a little bit shorter on other things, and hopefully just kind of get us kind of pulled into the present on everything else that's been going on behind the scenes while we've been focusing on soccer. So I think the obvious one, active right now, getting into the thick of it, college basketball. The NCAA basketball season has been in full swing. Some really interesting non-conference games to start the season. We've seen some big wins. We've seen some skids. We've seen some teams rise, some teams fall. It's been some really interesting parity in the top 10, top 25. So let's talk about it, right? So there's a new number one. That's one of the biggest thing that happened kind of while we were out, right? While we were out of the scene, UCLA defeated South Carolina to give the Gamecocks their first loss since 2023. I think it was their the first largest loss by an AP number one since 2020. UCLA came in and I think the way that they defeated South Carolina is as much the story as the fact that they did beat South Carolina. I don't think anyone expected the Gamecocks to be undefeated this season in a respectful way, right? It's not an easy thing to do. They went the full way last year. Really incredible accomplishment. They lose a player like Camila Cardoso. They have to refigure out how they're playing without that big presence inside. Them losing the game, not that big a deal. But it was, again, just sort of the edge that UCLA played with, the fact that UCLA has never beaten a number one before, and they want to win a national championship this year. And the way that they went in and did that feels like maybe we're seeing more of the contenders step up to turn this into hopefully a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 team race rather than last year where it felt very much like it was South Carolina and everybody else catching up. Where South Carolina is, and I'm again just not going to focus on this too much, but I mentioned that they're missing, Camila Cardoso, who went off to the WNBA this year. They're having some trouble with their offense specifically. Their defense is still elite, possibly best in the entire country. They bounced back from that UCLA loss by thumping ranked Iowa State by 40 points on their defense. Iowa State scored 9 points in the first half of that game on Thanksgiving. Their defense is amazing. And as we know, that keeps them in every single game that they play. But they start kind of slow on offense. They're still figuring out their distribution. They're figuring out how to utilize playing in the paint while also getting their shooters going. Dawn Staley is still very focused on that defensive identity, which means that she's coaching these players pretty tough. Sort of, you talk about Malaysia Fulwiley not playing a ton in the UCLA game because of some lapses on the defensive side. She's building this program out. She's very interested in player development in addition to winning. And that's sort of where they are at this moment, which is how can you continue to help these players develop? That was such a young team last year. They lose their senior focal point. What does that mean on offense? So they're relying on their defense. And I think that is why they are a title contender. But at some point you do wonder, okay, if the offense is streakier, if they have less control over being able to execute on offense, what does that mean, right? Other teams that have been kind of streaky, right? Notre Dame has this huge win against USC. USC definitely looks like a team of transfers right now. It looks like a team that doesn't know each other super well. You know that that's going to continue to develop throughout the season, but you are seeing Juju Watkins maybe have to go ISO more than she needs to, or she's trying to get to the foul line, or she's, trying to make things happen. She's not utilizing the skills of Kiki Iriafen as much as she could be. Notre Dame gets this huge win, but also just Notre Dame plays so well in this game against USC. They're tall. They shoot well from outside. They've got a great facilitator in Hannah Hidalgo. They've got another great facilitator in Olivia Miles, just fabulous guard play. Notre Dame looks like the real deal. But then they go on to lose 2 games straight, which Niele Ivey, who's the head coach of Notre Dame, she attributes that to a depth issue. And I think we've talked about this a lot with Notre Dame, which is they're really, really good. They've got a huge boost getting Olivia Miles back from injury. She looks like a lottery pick right now for the next WNBA draft, but they aren't as deep. They have some trouble with keeping players healthy. They're on a really tight rotation right now. They're only really playing like a small, like 6, 7, 8 player rotation. And that will start to hurt you over time in college ball. Players get tired. Their mental focus starts to slip, especially if you're away from home. This was one of those feast week trips to the Cayman Islands. Notre Dame, they look amazing. They're a little bit up and down. Can they get healthy? And where's the consistency for them? However, their first loss before they do continue the skid, they lose to an unranked team in their second loss, but they lose to TCU to start. Everyone has been talking about TCU being maybe the big kind of surprise of the college basketball season so far. They're in they made the program's highest ranking. They were at number 9 last week. First time in the top 10. They have a large presence inside with Sedona Prince. And then they have the resurgence of Haley Van Lith, who, as everybody knows, kind of had a tough year last year at LSU. She transfers to TCU. It's really nice to see her finding herself again, not only as a facilitator, which she was asked to do at LSU in, I think, ways that were incredibly restricting. And we saw some of the defensive assignments she was put on, or the way she was asked to bring the ball up the court that didn't necessarily play to her strengths, but also as an off-ball shooter. I think that she is a player that you see it like, maybe when you look at her in Louisville, you think, oh my gosh, this is a first rounder in the WNBA. She goes to LSU. You go, oh my gosh, what even is the pro prospect for this player? She comes back to TCU, a much better situation for her. And you think, yes, absolutely. This is a player that people are going to take a flyer on at the pro game. Really nice to see her land on her feet. So it's still all early days. There have been a number of upsets. There are dwindling numbers of undefeated teams. But we're just going to run down real quick kind of where the AP top 25 stands. I'm going to give you some of my picks for maybe sleepers and maybe some of the teams where I think it's a little bit too early to say. So UCLA is at number 1. You've got UConn number 2, South Carolina number 3, Texas number 4, LSU number 5, USC number 6, Maryland number 7, Duke number 8, TCU number 9, Notre Dame number 10, Oklahoma 11, Ohio State 12, Kansas State 13, Kentucky 14, West Virginia 15. We'll cut it off there. But there are some other nice surprises. Like you've got Illinois in the top 25. You've got Iowa making a nice run. They're still undefeated in their post-Caitlin Clark era. You've got a lot of Big Ten teams kind of sitting in that 15 to 25 range, just based off of the strength of their non-conference schedules. What I think we're looking at here, though, is genuinely 5, 6, 7 different contenders for what we're going to see at the end of the season. I wouldn't sleep on Maryland. You saw that they were kind of ranked sort of high. I think Maryland has been playing very well. I think Cheyenne Sellers is an underrated pro prospect to watch. I would not sleep on Maryland to be one of those teams that pushes for a high ranking in the Big Ten and definitely gets that NCAA seed. Texas, I think, is also a little bit underrated at the moment just because of the games that they've played so far this season. They have a big game tonight. It's Thursday, big game against Notre Dame. We're going to see the medal maybe of Notre Dame of are they bouncing back or not, and what does that mean matching up against a Texas team that is incredibly talented. Some of the games or some of the teams that I think is a little bit too early to tell. The two that stick out to me are UConn and LSU. UConn looks great, but they only, I believe, have 1 or 2 ranked games so far. Their box scores aren't always as, you look at scoring and you want the scoring to be really healthy, but you definitely see a couple of players carrying the team in ways. I think everyone expects Paige Beckers to be that player for them. We're seeing freshman Sarah Strong be incredibly good for them in the early going. And so they just kind of still also need to figure out how they're going to play as a team and play consistently and more of a sum of their parts. And then with LSU, still very good in this post-Angel Reese era, but they just haven't played anybody super tough yet. And so I think LSU is always kind of knocked for their easy non-conference schedule. I don't know if it's a knock. I think you have to kind of control what you can control in those scheduling moments, and things will get tough when they get into the SEC play. But I am like, they look great. Flau'jae Johnson looks like one of the best players in the country right now, but also they haven't played anybody. So tonight there's a great slate. Hopefully by the time this comes out, it hasn't happened yet, but if it has, check those box scores out, check those scores out. Duke is going to be playing South Carolina. That's going to be a really good game. You got Texas versus Notre Dame, a couple nice top 10 matchups there. And it's been a really fun start to the season so far. We're seeing some different looks. We're seeing some teams that we expect to be good later, maybe have their early bumps in the road. We have some teams that we expected to be good right away, hit some early bumps in the road, and everybody looks a little bit different. And that's what happens when you have like a historically great WNBA class come in like we did in 2024. College basketball landscapes looks a little bit different, and you get to kind of meet new stars and watch the coaches try to adapt into turning these teams into something that can compete later in the year. So another really exciting slate for college basketball. Moving on to WNBA off season. No action here on the court, but off the court, we're going to try to hit this quick because there's been a lot of movement. We have not touched on this too much at all, but we're going to try to do this as quickly as possible. So I'm going to run down all of the coaching changes that we've seen in the WNBA since the end of the 2024 season. First, you got Tyler Marsh, Vegas assistant. He is now the new head coach of the Chicago Sky. Kurt Miller, fired by LA as head coach, is now the Dallas general manager. Stephanie White steps away from Connecticut. She's now going to be coaching the Indiana Fever. Natalie Nikasi, Vegas assistant to Golden State. People knew that, but have to have her in there. Carl Smesko, FGCU head coach, is now the Atlanta Dream head coach. Lynn Roberts, Utah's head coach, is now LA's head coach. And Rachid Meziane he coached in France and also coached the Belgian women's national team, is now going to be the Connecticut Sun's new head coach. So a lot of change, a lot of change. I don't know what we're going to see on the court at the beginning of next year because we're going to see a lot of new systems, a lot of new philosophies. I think maybe the greater commentary has less to do with what we are going to see because I don't know. That's so much change. And people have talked a lot about how it is a reflection of the inflection point that the WNBA is at, that these teams need to get better and fast because they need to capture these fan bases as they're coming into women's basketball. You cannot be complacent. You have to move quickly and surely. But I like what this means for the coaching pool. Like if we look at all these different little buckets that people are being pulled from, I think that is a good rejuvenation of what can be a WNBA coach. I think you look at former assistants, right? You've got Marsh and Nikasi are former assistants, right? They're part of the Becky Hammon coaching tree. Back-to-back WNBA champion in 2022 and 2023. That's a great resume, right? You've got Smesko and Roberts coming from college. They also are specifically, those two are like analytics and stat wonks a little bit, where they like to play inside. They like to hit three-pointers. They might be a little bit more kind of following an ethos of play that they're bringing from college. I'm not surprised that the college coaches that were brought in were those that maybe demonstrated some really interesting tactical ideas that these WNBA teams might be interested in, a little bit more dogmatic perhaps. Meziane has the interesting kind of FIBA experience. He knows how to bring players together. I mean, I think national team coaching is obviously very different than club coaching, but good at having different personalities, and he had done quite well with the Belgian women's national team. And I think that that's just an interesting level of experience. And also you would think a good person to have considering how many WNBA players do play in Europe in the off season. And then Miller and White know what they're doing, right? These are two very well-respected people in the league. Miller probably unceremoniously kind of, swept aside in LA. He gets to go be a general manager. Stephanie White wanted to be closer, I believe, to family, so she moves back to the Midwest. She's going to be coaching Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston in that group. That's very exciting as well. Friday, we've got the Golden State expansion draft where we're going to be finding out some of these players that are going to fill out the Golden State roster. There's so much happening. Free agency, which also doesn't start until the beginning of next year, but I think that's kind of shaping up. The vibe is a little bit, is this the Kelsey Plum sweepstakes? She is one of the top free agents available. Is there this idea that maybe, Vegas is going to maybe want to do like a sign and trade to make sure that they kind of protect the rest of their roster as things move? Dallas now holds the number one pick, which a lot of people think will go for Paige Beckers if she decides to go pro after this season. That's a big get. I think there was this feeling that maybe LA was going to get that pick. Dallas ends up getting that pick. Kurt Miller gets the last laugh on the LA Sparks because the Wings are the ones who are in pole position to possibly be able to select Paige Beckers. We're hearing things out of Seattle that a player like Jewel Lloyd at the Chicago Sun-Times reported originally that Jewel Lloyd wants out of Seattle after an investigation showed that there was no wrongdoing done. Lloyd reportedly is the person who asked for that investigation after just a really bad locker room fit with some of the free agents that Seattle brought in. Not shocking if you watch them play at the end of the season. I think that it was clear that something wasn't quite right in Seattle. This might ultimately just result in Lloyd moving out. She does still have one more year on her contract, so that would not be free agency. That would be a trade. But you're seeing again this idea after the 2024 season that change is not only happening on the coaching level. You're going to have players who want different things. You've got the league expanding. You've got new horizons on teams investing in facilities, moving downtown into their different metropolitan areas. Things are changing in the WNBA, and I do think that's going to be reflected in player movement, and everything is kind of chaos because the CBA is going to be reopened, and that means that there's going to be a new CBA, hopefully, at the end of this year, or at the end of 2025, meaning that you're going to see a lot of one-year deals, and you're going to see a lot of players maybe just stick something in for 1 year, not really thinking too far about the future. And I think that can also cause a lot of player movement as well. You can be signing a 1 year deal and not necessarily super committed necessarily to the market that you're moving towards, but sometimes temporary fixes are good ones. And then you test out the market after the CBA has been renegotiated. One of the places you could go after the CBA is renegotiated is Toronto, the Toronto Tempo. Do we like that? We're back to names. The Toronto Tempo. I don't mind it. It's a little bit weird as you say it. There's a lot of T's and O's. Do we like it? I think I like it. I don't mind Toronto Tempo. My first question is, what tempo is it? Is it like a nice 132? Is it fast? Is it slow? I was kind of joking. I come from like a classical music background, so I'm like, this opens up a whole new world in music names. We got to get more like Italian music words into sports because we're running out of nouns, right? Like we're running out of these team names. So I'm thinking like, let's get into it. Let's do the Atlanta Accelerando, the Chicago Cadenza, the Dallas Diminuendo, the Portland Pizzicato. Let's dig in here. We can just really work this out, turn all of this into something. But yeah, Toronto Tempo, I don't mind. So WNBA, a lot going on off the court. Like I said, free agency opens up at the beginning of next year, so things will be relatively quiet. But you are also going to see, again, Golden State get to pick their first players, which is very exciting. They are allowed to pick one unrestricted free agent. We're going to find out if there are any kind of handshake deals. We saw this in the NWSL at times where teams would leave certain players unprotected with a handshake deal that was going to be it. And the rest of the team would be exempt from anything else. But we'll see. Lots to come. But it's an exciting new era for the WNBA. There's a lot more money being poured in, which means there are a lot more eyeballs watching, and you got to execute. And so I think we've seen that reflected in a lot of off-season movement. So moving on, we're going to keep this moving. We're going to do some quick hits on some other sports that I've been watching and enjoying this winter so far. The second season of NHL dropped the puck last weekend. I just have one thought so far, which is just that number one pick Sarah Fillier is really good at hockey. New York finishes last in last season, and so they get to get the number one pick. Sarah Fillier, she's got 2 goals and 3 assists in 2 games after going to New York. New York is at the top of the standings at the moment. I think that's great. I'm like, hey, new talent coming in. She's really, really good. That's like my person to watch. I've been like, anytime New York is playing, I want to see it because they are a lot more dynamic this year than they were last year. NCAA volleyball. The NCAA volleyball tournament. The NCAA tournament starts this weekend. The ACC kind of feels like this big showdown between the ACC and the Big Ten. Like we'll see if there's some upsets. I mean, there's always upsets in college brackets, right? There's always going to be bracket busters. But in terms of the top performers throughout the regular season, you've got sort of the mighty ACC versus the mighty Big Ten. Your number one seeds are Pitt and Louisville, Nebraska, and Penn State. So 2 ACC, 2 Big Ten. A number of number 2 seeds are ACC as well. One number 2 seed is Big Ten as well. You're going to have like Nebraska and Wisconsin in the same quadrant. You've got Pitt and SMU in the same quadrant. Pitt has been the number 1 team in the country for pretty much the entire season. I think Louisville is the person who's going to have to contend perhaps with Stanford. It's an interesting thing to watch. This is maybe my overall thing for NCAA, like non-basketball, as I've been watching it, is we always knew that the ACC has been a very strong conference for women's sports, women's volleyball, women's basketball, women's soccer. But with kind of Stanford coming into the fold, it feels like that is only more true. And I just kind of want to shout out Stanford. These fall sports, these winter sports, they were kind of bearing the brunt of the first wave of conference realignment. The travel schedule for Stanford volleyball and soccer have been pretty ridiculous. These are students, right? These are student athletes in their first semester of the year trying to deal with all of this. And Stanford got a number 2 seed in the volleyball tournament, and their soccer team is in the College Cup. And I just am very, very impressed by the way that these Stanford athletes have been able to balance everything and perform in a wildly new era of college sports that, as we know, did not always have them top of mind when people were making these decisions. But let's talk about it. The ACC-ification of college sports. Stanford, North Carolina, Wake Forest, and Duke are in the College Cup for the Women's Soccer Championship, NCAA Women's Soccer Championship. That's going to be going on this weekend and early next week. ACC, man. ACC. It was interesting. At the JWS party at NWSL weekend, there's a lot of, current and former, obviously D1 college athletes or former pro athletes, pro soccer players. And I was chatting with one, it's unnamed, former ACC D1 athlete and former NWSL player who said to me, I said, Wake Forest surprise of the season. And she said, Wake Forest is always hard. Don't say that to me. She said, Wake Forest is always a tough team to play. So shout out to the ACC. Again, shout out to Stanford for what they've been able to do. Respect to Wake Forest. Duke maybe looks like the team to beat overall. We'll see if they're able to pull it off, but some really good college soccer. And as we know, with the new CBA and the NWSL, a lot of these players are eligible to start talking about their pro careers basically immediately after this is over. So not necessarily a traditional like players to watch for the draft, because there is no draft anymore, but it's more like, wow, look at all of these players. This is developmental. This is possible for any of these players to move on to the pro game. So check out the College Cup. It's so fun. I love college soccer. I love the clock winding down. I've totally flipped. I love the clock winding down. I love the clock stopping. I love the fact that you can have a buzzer beater, no stoppage time. It's really, really fun. It's when WOSO becomes WSOC, right? And I love that. So check out that this weekend. And then finally, we'll close on NWSL. We'll go back to soccer for just one second. I think we're seeing some early trends in free agency for NWSL. I like that NWSL free agency starts so early, by the way. I don't like that we wait so long for WNBA free agency. I don't like sitting and waiting. I want to know what's going to happen. NWSL free agency, players are leaving Gotham. Maybe it's not unexpected, right? They really packed that roster last year, and the team was great, right? And there are cap restrictions. I think if you're going to pack the team and get this super team, there's only so much money to go around, and there's only so much playing time to go around. So you have Delaney Sheehan, who left Gotham, and this was a little bit surprising. She was one of their starting midfielders. She leaves Gotham to go to Houston. It's been reported that there was a hefty salary raise involved in that. So she goes to the worst team in the league in 2024 from one of the best teams in the league because there's a healthy salary raise in it. Or you have Maitan Lopez. She's going to Chicago from Gotham. Seems like that is maybe a playing time thing, right? Salaries and playing time. And I think this is a good, real quick, I'll just leave it with this, which is moving into this new landscape for the NWSL without the draft, without some of the parity rules in place. I think this is a good example of how the parity rules that are still in place might continue to keep the league as competitive as it has always been. I think the Sheehan example is a really good one, which is that if you do have a salary cap, right, and you have roster restrictions, you're always going to have players who have to consider how much money they're making and how much playing time they're getting, which really just cuts down on the abilities for these teams to stash people on their rosters. And I think that's going to be encouraging parity as much as anything else. If another team comes with a better offer, either in getting on the pitch or in money, I think players are going to have to heavily consider that. And so Gotham, God bless, is like a really interesting experiment in, first, what happens when you do bring all these personalities in and all these U.S. Women's National Team players in and these different veterans and new players, and how do you get them all to work together? We saw that play out on the pitch very successfully this year. But then it's also, but what does that mean for everybody else? What does it mean for salary structures, for dealing with the cap, for playing time? And we might see the ripple effect of that for Gotham as well. So both sides for Gotham. I love to, it's easy for me to sit here. I feel for the fans because it's probably there's going to be some upheaval perhaps this offseason, but I am also like, what an interesting experiment and what it means to build a super team in the NWSL, and how perhaps parity will continue to reign regardless. So hopefully you all enjoyed a little bit of a different rundown today. This has been today's episode of The Late Sub. I am your host, Claire Watkins. Shout out to producer extraordinaire Parker Fenton. We're going to be wrapping this up this year with a lot of different winter sports. We got basketball going strong, PWHL. I want to get into some of the tournaments, some of the volleyball tournaments. We want to talk about the College Cup, all this good stuff next week. I hope everyone enjoyed sort of this wrap around of women's sports. We'll be back with you next time.